Well, yeah, I'm Brendan. My mom's super proud that she sent me to college to write books about poop, so here we are. Before we get started, I'm going to go on a quick editorial rant. Do we have any listeners to WMFE 90.7 in the house? Excellent. More importantly, do we have any sustaining members in the house? All right, wonderful. Do not tell my boss that I'm doing this, so don't send any angry emails to my boss about this. But I'm going to go on a quick editorial rant, okay? Anybody catch the launch last weekend of SpaceX? Really cool, right? That uncrewed demo mission. Wonderful. We are on the verge of humans launching from the U.S., from U.S. soil, from right here, the first time since the shuttle program in 2011. That's a big deal that's happening here, and there were a lot of reporters out there. And so here's my plea. This is my promise to you and my plea to you as well. When we talk about these programs, we don't use this. We don't use the word man because we send a lot of people to space, not just men. And case in point, this is Christina Cook. She just launched to the space station like hours ago. She's probably docking with it right now. And later this month, we're going to have our first all-female spacewalk. Right, that is something to celebrate. It's something that should have happened long ago, but it's something we're celebrating now. So my promise to you, when I report on things like this, I'm going to use words like a crewed mission, a human space flight, and uncrewed capsule. So that's my promise to you, and I want you all to start using that too. Let's get rid of the manned space program. It's still in the AP style book, but long ago when we first started covering space, once again at WMFE, we realized that had to go. Not because it's for diversity or to bring more people and it's more inclusive, it's just accurate. It's not manned spaceflight anymore, it's human spaceflight. So that's my promise to you. You guys start using that. Let's get that to go. Thank you. With that said, so words matter. I'm sure you expected a parental advisory from the NPR reporter. This is what's going to happen. Today we're going to talk about pee and poo. We're going to hear and see the S word and the F word. I'm going to giggle a lot because this is funny, and I wrote this a few nights ago after a few beers. So we're going to make really crappy jokes. I've already wasted all of them with Ricardo's intro. Thanks for using them, buddy. And we're all going to learn something tonight. So without further ado, this is To Boldly Go, the semi-solid history of the space toilet. Okay, so the history of the space toilet begins with this gentleman. This is Alan Shepard in 1961. This is when men had to take their shirts off before they went to space, apparently. But he was going to be the first U.S. astronaut in the Mercury program. Here he is. Reporting on space is really difficult because you've got to get a sense of scale. The capsule that he was in, the Mercury capsule, it was fucking tiny. It was really small. You can see him climbing into it here. It wasn't really fun at all. And it was only supposed to last about 15 minutes. So Alan Shepard went on what we call a suborbital flight. So basically, it was a ballistic trajectory. So they shot him literally on a missile this way, came down, hey, he went to space. And it was supposed to last 15 minutes. We're supposed to learn all sorts of things about it. And in 15 minutes, they're like, you're not going to have to pee. You'll be fine. Just hold it. He was super... Anybody seen The Right Stuff? They know the story I'm about to tell. Anyways, he was super nervous. At breakfast, he had like 4 cups of coffee. He's sitting in his capsule. He's waiting to go on this trajectory and realizes, oh, there's going to be some delays. So he's on the launch pad in this capsule, laying on his back with all this coffee. We know coffee's a diuretic. He has to pee. He had to pee real bad. And so he radioed to his capsule communicator and said, I have to pee. And they're like, well, Al, you can't leave, you can't pee, just kind of hold it. He's like, my bladder's going to burst, guys. And so they actually had a conversation in mission control. Can Al pee in his spacesuit? Is he going to be okay? He really has to go. And they eventually said yes. So Al peed in his spacesuit. If you watch The Right Stuff, he has some very interesting comments about that. I'm not going to repeat it here. But yeah, so he ended up launching, got this beautiful view from Earth, all well, with a soaked back of his spacesuit because it kind of went this way. So the first man in space was covered in pee. So go America, making it great, huh? There, oh, there, look, and that's a video from inside the capsule soaked with piss. There's Al Shepard. Okay, so NASA was like, all right, we need to figure this shit out real quick. So when John Glenn went up on Friendship 7, which was a 4-hour mission, they were like, we should probably figure out how we deal with his pee. So they came up with this bladder thing. So that's a urine collection bag from John Glenn's Mercury flight. In researching this book, I have the weirdest Google history. Let me just tell you that. But there is John Glenn's Mercury flight urine bag, and over here, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to back away so you can see the pee condom over here. This is what they actually wrap on the faucet of the human being to collect the urine to put it into the bag. So that's wonderful. There's fun stories about the naming of the sizes of the condom in the astronaut corps. Apparently small, medium, large didn't work for them, so they changed it up a bit. But anyways, they figured out, we better figure out a way, because even just during his 4-hour flight, he came up with 27 ounces of pee. That's like more than 2 pints of beer. That's a lot of pee. And the reason why it's so interesting is that you have to force yourself to go to the bathroom when you're in space, right? So think of your bladder, right? You've got your bladder and you've got gravity. So when you fill your bladder up, gravity pushes down and your body realizes, hey, I've got to go to the bathroom. When you're in space, you're in a microgravity environment, all of that urine floats around. If you don't force yourself to go to the bathroom, your bladder's going to burst or you get a bladder infection. So NASA was very concerned about that. They knew that going into the Mercury program, which is why they spent so much time dealing with this. Let's see what we have next. Oh yes, Gordon Cooper, one of my favorite astronauts here. Gordon Cooper was the last of the Mercury astronauts. He was getting ready to go on a mission that was going to be longer than a day. And so knowing that John Glenn, in his first orbital flight, he came up with 27 ounces of pee, and it was just 4 hours. This guy's going up for 30 plus hours. He's going to have a lot of pee. And the scientists down here want to figure out what's going on. We need to make sure he's peeing enough. What's in his urine? We really want to study Gordon Cooper's pee. So they came up with a program. This is the Mercury Atlas MA9 urination system. So basically, let's see, well, this doesn't work here. But we've got an in-suit bag. So that's one of the bags that we saw there. That's inside Gordon Cooper's bag. He's got a little fly, and there's a quick disconnect. There's a hose. There's a pump. He hated the pump, let me tell you that. And then there's a storage bag. That's where all the pee goes. So basically, when Gordon Cooper goes to the bathroom in space, he goes to the bathroom, and he pumps this little thing here, and fills up this bag, and he says, take the bag, and he has to store it under his seat. And he brings that all back. And we'll talk about what he does with extra stuff anyways. But this is the first toilet. This is the first space toilet. This is really cool. We came up with the first space toilet. He hated it. So there he is up there with his space toilet. And so do you remember Al Shepard that we just talked about and how he had to pee? When he got permission to pee, the capsule commander, they always had astronauts on console talking to them, was Gordon Cooper. So he had to get permission from Gordon Cooper to go to the bathroom in his spacesuit. On Gordon Cooper's mission, Al Shepard was his capsule commander. So what he did as a prank is before he got into the capsule, this is fun, he put a plunger on his seat with a remove before flight tag. So there he is. Look at that cheeky bastard. Look at him. There he is. All right. Okay, so Project Gemini, if you can't see this, this is the smelliest effing space mission in the entire world. So all of these missions are getting us closer to putting humans on the moon, right? Gemini was gross. It was a very disgusting mission. But they figured out how to collect urine and store urine a little bit better for the Gemini mission. So there's the roll-off condom cuff, the urine receiver, the receiver valve, the sample valve, the collection bag. So this is what they came up with. But Gemini, you were in space for a lot longer than for a few hours. The longest Gemini mission was about 14 days, so 2 weeks in space. You're not going to store all that pee. So I've got some really cool archival footage for you all of some astronauts actually venting urine out of their spacecraft into space. This is beautiful. You ready to watch this? see if we got, look at that. That is pee coming out of a spacecraft and crystallizing in the vacuum of space. Isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that beautiful? Man, we are amazing species, aren't we? So this is my favorite story. So we got Jim Lovell, Frank Borman. You'll probably recognize Jim Lovell. He later went on to play Tom Hanks in Apollo 13. They were in Gemini 7, which was 13 days, 18 hours, 35 minutes, and 1 second. It was the longest time that humans had been in space, U.S. humans had been in space at this point. And basically, the whole goal of Gemini 7 was to figure out if we could actually do it. They almost didn't. This is what they were living in. So basically, it's like the front seat of like a small SUV. They lived in that for 14 days. And Jim Lovell totally screwed up in the first few days, and his urine bag leaked a bit. And so there was like urine like droplets floating everywhere. And we'll get to this later, but they gave them a low fiber diet, so they didn't have a lot of solids. He couldn't hold it, so he had like 5 days left, and he had to go number 2. And so when this is an urban legend, and I haven't been able to confirm this, but a lot of people have said this, but when they opened the hatches on recovery, some of the Air Force guys like threw up when they smelled what it was like inside that. So bless their hearts. Okay, so I just alluded to this. We talked about pee, but we're going to take a quick potty break, and we're talk a little bit about physics at this point. So pee is really easy to deal with. Number one, it's super easy to deal with because it comes out, you can okay, how do I say this? You can hard dock with something as a man in the early space flight. You've got a lot of velocity, and there's a break point. You can shut it off, right? Guys, we know we can shut it off. So the best way to kind of, it's a squirt gun. Okay, so that's number one. So that's the physics of number one. And that's easy. That is easy. Number two, on the other hand, I was really struggling to figure out how to tell you guys what number 2 is like. There's a lot of uninterrupted mass, I guess you could say. It's very sticky. It's really difficult. So once it starts going, it's hard to get it to stop. And the one thing that I've learned from researching this book is that we really take gravity for granted. That is really the only reason why we have separation of defecation, is because of gravity. There is no physical process on our body that clamps it off. It is gravity that makes it happen. So, when we're talking about the Apollo program and long-term duration in space, we have to think about that. So NASA comes up with this lovely bag. I think you can kind of understand how this works. So this is a defecation bag. This is a fecal contamination, what do they call it? A defecation collection device, a DCD if we were NASA. But basically, it is a bag. On one end goes to the buttocks. There is adhesive on that rim. Guys, think about that. There's adhesive on that rim. There is a bag, and where that little square is, this germicidal thing goes into, is this little capsule. So after you've put the stuff in there, you have to crack this capsule, mix it up. Really gross. That little extender thing, that's for your fingers. That's how you get it to undock from your body. And in this lovely image, we can see where this goes. I have looked at this image, like I had a source send me this image like a year ago when I started working on this. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It wasn't until today when I showed it to my wife, she's like, why are his fingers in there? I'm like, oh, that's what it's for. So that is how you would go number 2 in space. And it was so bad that the Apollo astronauts would hold it for as long as they possibly could because they didn't want to do it. It took like an hour to go number 2 because you literally had to take all your suit off, affix this thing to your behind, do the whole thing, make sure it came off, seal it up, you crack the thing, mix it up. You had to like massage the sample to make sure that the antibacterial or my antimicrobial would make it through and all this. It was gross. So they just wouldn't do it. Oh, yes, this is my favorite. This was recently declassified. Sometime turds go rogue. And I'll go ahead and read this to you. So we got, here we go, command module pilot. I didn't do it. It ain't one of mine. Next guy. I don't think it's one of mine. Mine was a little more sticky than that. Throw that away. God almighty. They said on 135, they told us, here's another goddamn turd. What's the matter with you guys here? Give me a... Well, babe, it was me. I'm sure you would know it wasn't shit on the floor. It was a floating turd. Yes, mine was stickier than that. And they finally say, I don't know who that is. I can neither claim it nor declaim it. Laughter. That was from Apollo 9. So there you go, right? Lovely stuff. On Apollo 9, it was my favorite astronaut, John Young. And we're going to just take a quick sidebar so I can show you this, because this is my favorite thing, and I hope the sound works. This is John Young on the surface of the moon on Apollo 16. Keep in mind, he doesn't know his microphone is on. So that's John Young, that's my favorite. I showed that video today in the newsroom, and Matthew Petty was like, make sure everyone knows they should call it John Young Fartway. But he's an Orlando boy, he calls Orlando home. That's one of my regrets as being a space reporter, is never got to meet him before he died. But John Young is what John Young Parkway is named after. So there you go, next time you're driving on John Young Parkway, remember he farted on the moon and said he wasn't eating any more fucking citrus. So... Okay, so we kind of figured shit out, for lack of a better word here, when we came to Skylab. So when Apollo was canceled, they had a bunch of extra Saturn V rockets and some hardware, so they're like, well, let's go ahead and make a space station. But we better figure out how to deal with poop a little bit better. So Skylab was really cool. Here's a great video of people in Skylab there. It was our first US space station. It was occupied for about 6 months. It was in orbit from May to February, but there was some time in between when people weren't there. They conducted 270 experiments in biomedical and life sciences, solar astronomy, Earth observations, material processing. But the most important thing is they were looking for the astronauts' physiological response to long-duration spaceflight. So this is just years before we're going to bring the shuttle bring the shuttle on board, and then also have the International Space Station. So we need to figure out how to live and work in space for an extended period of time, and that included the toilet. So here's a Skylab astronaut that said, we owe our greatest appreciation to the people who designed Skylab, or the toilet. It has worked much better than anticipated and has been essentially trouble-free and not terribly time-consuming. That's because that little hole right there, that's where you dock the backside. And they came up with a way to figure out, like, a way to get around actually breaking it off and de-docking it manually by applying a fan. And so there was this fan that actually created negative pressure and pulled the fecal matter away from the body and into these little bags. So they were bags that they were meshed, so you could actually pull the air through, and then the fecal matter came in, and then you press them down and turn them into little poo briquettes, and then you could throw them away. And it was so much cleaner. And there was a nozzle for urine that you could just go ahead and put the urine in. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. They loved it. Because these are Apollo-era astronauts that are living with the idea that they're going to have to go to space, live in space, and affix this, eyebrow wax thing to their butt and pull it off when they're done every time they have to go number 2. For this one, they can easily go and do it. A newer era. So the space shuttle used a similar design. I actually got to sit on a replica, which is pretty much the coolest thing in the world. I did not use it. but I got to sit in a replica. So basically, this conforms to your booty, and you create that negative pressure, and it pulls it all away from you. It's very easy to use. However, they figured out how to pee, they figured out how to poop, but they still had one huge problem to figure out dealing with waste in space. And what do you think that change was? What do you think they had to think about moving forward? Anybody want to take? Women! You are absolutely right. It was when Sally Ride joined the astronaut corps. And it's not for what you think. So this is an important part of the space shuttle. So these are the space shuttle suits. There's the LES. I don't know what that stands for because there's too many acronyms in this friggin' beat. And there's ACES, the Advanced Crew Escape System, I think is what that means. I'm making stuff up at this point. But basically, you would wear these suits on launch and entry. And basically, these suits in the space shuttle were like tiny spacecraft. They were pressurized, so if there was loss of pressure or there was something went wrong, you'd be in this tiny spacecraft and you'd be taken care of. So they were fully pressurized, but there was no way to pee. So that's important, obviously. Early attempt. This is from a NASA paper I found. Early attempts to design feminized versions of the male devices were unsuccessful. Apparently, the condom wasn't going to work for the female genitalia. And early, I spoke with a historian in women's spaceflight. An early attempt to make a way for women to pee was this. It was like this big, and it was this like it was like a mask that like Air Force pilots would put on, you know, when you're in your fighter jet that they were supposed to put on down here, and then put on their spacesuits and then sit. And the female astronauts were like, well, no, that's not going to work. It got so bad they gave the men engineers at Johnson Space Center, they had these like plaster molds of female genitalia so they could sit on their desk, so they could think about how to figure this out. It was that, and the guys just use them as pencil holders. But they finally, and this is the most interesting thing I found researching this book. A failed USDA experiment made its way to NASA. And the USDA experiment was with this weird kind of plastic polymer, whatever it was, that was supposed to, you could put in arid areas, and you put it in the soil, and you would inject it in the soil, and when it rained sparingly, it would hold liquid, and then it would expand. And the USDA couldn't figure out a way to use it, so they're like, NASA, do you want it? And NASA was like, actually, we've got this problem we can't figure out. And so enter the astronaut diaper. And that was the solution. You could just urinate wherever you were, and it would collect all of this mass. And it basically changed the way that the space shuttle program worked. It was a simple solution, and it worked. So the International Space Station, we've been on the International Space Station for almost 20 years, consistently crewed, and we've got a toilet. And so there is the International Space Station toilet, and I'm going to let ESA astronaut Samantha Cristoforti give us a fun little tour of the space station toilet.
Hello, and welcome to the toilet of the International Space Station. Let's say you're up here on ISS and you need to go to the restroom. You want to come to this cabin, and the first thing you want to do is grab this piece of equipment and turn this rotary switch 90 degrees to the open position. What that does is it turns on a fan, which creates a suction effect in this hose so that you can use this yellow element for your number one. For number two, the principle is actually exactly the same, suction. We have a solid waste container here, and on top of it is this seat. And the solid waste container is connected via this hose to the same fan, so that, again, the same suction effect allows you to do your number two in weightlessness. I want to show you how it looks, but since we don't want any bad smells to come out, we're gonna actually turn on the fan. It's gonna be a little bit loud. There we go. Now you can lift the lid. There is this seat that sort of looks comfortable, but you don't really sit in weightlessness. So most of us actually prefer to lift this one as well and use directly the opening that goes into the bag. And in fact, there is a bag in there. It looks like this. And when we are done with our business, we close the bag and we push it down into the solid waste container. And then, of course, as a courtesy to the next person, we put a new fresh bag inside. The solid waste container gets changed when it's full, which is roughly every 10 days for a crew of 3 people using it. This one, for example, was installed on the 61st day of this year. So probably roughly around day 71, we will have to change it again. But urine gets recycled. So from the pretty complicated hydraulic equipment that is behind here and makes the use of the toilet in space possible, the urine actually gets directly transferred to another piece of equipment which is here in the floor, which is called UPA, Urine Processing Assembly, which is the first step into turning urine into potable water.
So there you go. She buried the lead on that one. They recycle the urine. So all of the liquid on the space station, whether it is urine, perspiration, humidity, it is all recycled and they drink it as potable water. Yeah, that's some fun faces there. It's with this piece of equipment here, you drink out of this, right? But really, drinking our own urine is the only reason why humans can stay in space for as long as they can. We can make oxygen, we can scrub the environment, but water is really difficult to get up into space. It's very heavy and it costs a lot of fuel to get water into space. So being able to recycle your urine it just makes sense. And the astronauts I've talked to, they're like, it tastes better than the stuff down here. So bon appetit, whatever. All right. So as we start launching humans to the International Space Station, there's a few different options. Up there in that top corner, that's the Soyuz. That's what our friend Christina Cook just launched in. They're probably docking right now. The Dragon space capsule just made it up there. The Starliner is going to be taking humans to the International Space Station. It takes about 6 hours to get there. And the suits that we have designed for them don't have the urine collection in them. So they have these fun little handheld urine collectors for those short trips there. This is Orion. NASA's building this one to take us to places like the moon and deep space again. And my good friend, who actually has spoken here, Emily Speck, she went to go see the Orion mock-up, and the first thing she did was ask where the bathroom was for me, which I really appreciated. She's standing on it. So when they're in space, they would pull that out, and that's your bathroom there. So why are we really interested in going to the bathroom in space? Well, the ultimate goal is to put humans on Mars, and we're going to need to figure out how to do that, and one of the things we have to deal with is waste management. This is another Nerd Night speaker here. This is Annie Meyer. She's developing this amazing piece of technology at the Kennedy Space Center called the trash to gas compactor. Basically uses high heat and really fancy chemistry that I'm not going to explain to you. It's called a Sabatier reaction. You can Google it. But basically, it takes trash. So she can put all sorts of trash into this thing, whether it be feces, plastic, food waste, all this stuff. And she can burn it and turn it into oxygen, hydrogen, and water. So that's something that you would really need when you're on Mars, or even more importantly, on your way to Mars. So that's what she's working on right now at the Kennedy Space Center. She's got this really cool mock-up. She also has synthetic poop that I'm trying to get her to name after me, but she hasn't done it yet. Also, there is the option to put some of this waste inside the space capsule. When you're on this 8-month trip to Mars, why don't you take those poop briquettes, stuff them in the walls, radiation shielding, right? There you go. It's going to smell really great. And there's also the option to use feces as fertilizer, which if you ask anyone at NASA, you can't fucking do, so stop asking them about that. They hate the Martian, by the way. Let's see, what did I do here? Oh yeah, there we go. Let's wrap it up. So some takeaways here. We've been struggling with poop since we left Earth. Still working on it. Space is hard. Space is smelly. B tastes good. Scientists have a handle on poop and the future is bright. And our mastery of galactic poop will be humanity's crowning achievement. That is my last pun for the day. Go ahead and listen to me on WMFE most of the time. I also have a podcast where we talk about all of these things. It's called Are We There Yet? And I'll leave my contact details up here if you guys want to get in touch with me. So hope you enjoyed my talk on space poop. Yeah, that's it. If you guys have any questions, let me know.
Go to nerdnite.com to find a Nerd Night event near you. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for our latest presentation.